Welcome to this week's Shop Talk, in which we have someone who's in the licensing industry Hall of Fame. This week we're going to talk about licensing consumer products, the current state, and with me today is Debra Joester, who's known for such things as Pepsi, South Park, Kellogg's, Entenmann's, Corona, Beverly Hills 90210, and Care Bears at its peak. It's a pretty good lineup. Debra, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with this. How do you know if you have a brand worth licensing? Everybody thinks, I got a brand, let me license it out. I mean, how can you establish what it's worth and is it worth doing?
There are short-term licensing opportunities, there's long-term licensing opportunities, but at the core there's one question you have to answer. Are there enough consumers that have brand love that will buy products that that brand produces or pay for the experiences that that brand is willing to license? If you don't have a consumer base that is willing to go beyond the core product, don't license it.
So how do you determine that? I mean,
There's a lot of research that is done these days. Responsible brand owners, the big CPG brands, they do a lot of research. And in today's world, you also see things on the internet. There's a lot of unauthorized product out there. You look at sites like Redbubble, the marketplace on Walmart and on Amazon. You're seeing what's bubbling up and what's emerging. Retailers are also letting us know what their customers are looking for. So there's a lot of places where you can get insight as to what consumers are gravitating to. But the great brands that really engage consumers, whether it's Apple or Cheetos or Coca-Cola and Pepsi, these big brands really do a lot of psychographic research and they know where their consumers are.
so brands get into licensing for different reasons. Most of the time, it's for money, but there are other reasons.
There are a lot of reasons. Licensing is now part of the marketing strategy for a lot of brands, so it goes beyond revenue. Though for some brands, entertainment brands, the movie franchises, et cetera, those are very revenue driven. It's part of their revenue model. If you are looking at celebrities, music, toy brand extensions, most of that also is revenue driven. But if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, licensing is a rounding error. So why are you really doing it? You're doing it for consumer engagement. You're doing it to extend your brand beyond where you sell your core product, so your retail footprint is extended and you're more important to your retailer and to your customer. There are a lot of reasons, but a growing reason is consumer engagement. Consumer engagement is an incredibly important dynamic within licensing today because especially with millennials and Gen Z, their brand loyalty is fading and you want to really have that emotional connection with them. Licensing helps you get there.
So give me an example of a brand that has expanded in licensing, not for money, but really to grow their visibility.
Well, if you look at brands like Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola, both of them are category leaders, global brands. For them, it's not primarily about the revenue. It is about elevating brand cachet and creating unexpected mashups with some really exciting products or brands. That's why you're seeing so many of these brands enter into brand collaborations, whether it's with really funky street brands like Bathing Ape or with Nike and Adidas and other brands along those lines. You're seeing these brands try to find another way to have their fans and potential customers experience the brand beyond the core product.
So give me another example of maybe somebody in the food area that's expanded into other foods to grow their visibility and footprint.
One great example is Welch's that has extended the brand and the flavor profile into a lot of categories. We're currently working with Jack Link's. They are a billion-dollar brand, but their specialty is beef jerky and jerky products. So they're not in the refrigerator section, they're not in the freezer section. For us to bring them into all these categories, we need to work with experts in those fields, and that really allows them to expand their retail platform, be more important to the retailers, and really deliver on that 28 flavor profiles they have in their core product.
So how do you decide where to expand? Is this a collaboration between the company and the licensing agent? Like, if I have beef jerky, I want to go to different aisles. Are you just guessing, I think people will like this, or is there research that can be done?
We believe research is really important, especially when you're getting beyond lifestyle products. If you're creating a toy or a t-shirt or something that's more about impulse buy, and it's really about rewarding that relationship with the brand, that tends to be an easier path of entry. But if you're going to invest millions of dollars in product development, slotting fees, and really ask the consumer to trust you to take your brand into a very competitive category like food, frozen food, et cetera, you really need to know that that consumer is ready to buy in. So research in the beginning, permission research, research once the product is developed, intent to purchase, all of those factors are really important in making those decisions and pulling the trigger.
An aspect of licensing that's forgotten is the earned media. I don't watch TV commercials. Nobody in my house watches commercials. So how do you get in front of the consumer? I don't think companies realize how important the earned media and the visibility is when doing a licensing program.
That's a really good point, and I think a growing number of the big CPG companies and the companies that have sophisticated marketing departments have started to recognize the importance of how licensing can drive earned media. The way it happens is typically social media and influencers. That is where a lot of these companies are now spending a lot of their marketing dollars. They're spending it on digital marketing, they're spending it on influencer marketing. So when licensing can deliver a lot of influencers, hundreds of millions of impressions, that starts to be very, very valuable. It's another reason why collaborations are so important, because collaborations will drive the greatest number of earned media impressions.
When you talk in collaborations, what do you talk, more specifically, what are you talking about? Give me an example.
So a collaboration is really a mashup with two brands. Recently, we partnered Coach with Pepsi. We partnered
Coach and Pepsi? What
Coach
was
and
made?
Pepsi.
That sounds...
It was fabulous handbags that were part of a 90s throwback. So Pepsi had a relaunch of their 90s throwback flavor and bottles, and Coach was doing a 90s collection. It was a multi-million dollar success, sold globally from China all the way to the United States and all through Europe. That was a huge success. Fila and Pepsi partnered last year, also leaning into the red, white, and blue of Fila, the red, white, and blue of Pepsi, and the whole athleisure trend of taking pop culture brands and athleisure and marrying the two. So these are these mashups that you see. We'll see them on the runways, we'll see them in stores, and they tend to be in specialty and department stores and not at mass market.
Now, talking about department stores, retail's getting tougher. I mean, you go back 20 years ago, you had all these brands, you could find them in the stores. What are brands doing with the limited amount of retail space available?
You know, consumers are buying as much product as they used to. They're spending a little more money on experiences than they are on product in some cases, but they are buying a lot of goods. So where are they shopping? They're shopping in specialty stores. Gen Z in particular likes the mall. So they grew up on the internet and seeing everything being available on Amazon on the internet. They're actually gravitating back to stores in the mall, but you have to give them an experience that they appreciate. It can't just be a lot of product and nothing else. That's really important. Social media is another reason these young consumers are going into those stores. Of course, there are a lot of other ways to shop today. Digital. Amazon is huge, but so are some of these specialty retailers. Like if you look at a Redbubble, for instance, which, you know, not all the product is authorized, but it is user generated. These are people who love brands, who are celebrating the brand through their own creative lens, and they're offering it to other brand enthusiasts. It's really a challenge for brand owners because on the one hand, they want their brand enthusiasts to get product they love and engage with the brand. But on the other hand, the lawyers are saying, wait a minute, this is unauthorized. We shouldn't be allowing it. So there's a lot of new dynamics that are raising a lot of questions.
How much time and money is spent chasing down counterfeits?
A lot, and until the marketplaces at Amazon, at Walmart, and others start to police those marketplaces, it's going to become more and more complicated. Infringements run into the billions of dollars. They're talking about infringements reaching over $1 trillion in the next decade if we don't start having better policing of marketplace. It is so easy to replicate, duplicate brands and products, and in some cases it's quite dangerous because consumers don't know what they're buying.
Speaking of Amazon, you see a lot of brands have brand pages on Amazon. I mean, who is doing that when there's a lot of different products sold? Is that the role of a licensing agency to put that together, or who's coordinating all of this?
Our agency actually does that for 4 of our clients. We have Amazon pages we manage, and that includes everything from the Amazon marketing services, working with all the marketing and advertising that drives consumers to specific products, updating graphics, photography, creating seasonal kind of tentpoles for why people should shop, and also working with third-party agencies to really drive additional eyeballs and sales. We do it for Corona, we do it for Eric Carle, for Miffy, for Kellogg's, and it's really an important way to have one place where consumers can find all the product. As you said, retail's changing. In today's world, it's really hard to walk into a big box store and know you can find everything that brand has to offer. You can find that at Amazon, and that gives Amazon a huge advantage.
Are companies doing something similar on other channels, other online channels? Is really Amazon the only place where you can find a whole brand environment for entire product line?
A lot of companies have their own sites. McDonald's last December launched Golden Arches Unlimited, and it got enormous press and a lot of traffic. The challenge is continuing to market and promote those sites. Consumers have to be reminded those sites exist. So when you see major brands with their own e-stores, typically more product is sold on Amazon for those brands than on their own e-stores. And it's just the autopilot kind of factor of Amazon. Even if you don't buy there, that's where people go to research, right? Over 50% of all sales made are research on Amazon first. So if you see it, you're likely to buy it.
Looking at what we're saying, it sounds like you spend a lot of time with retail and that your agency, as well as many other agencies, are part of the retail process. So it's not just the burden of the manufacturers and partners to get the product to retail. It sounds like you're very involved in the process.
It is important to work with manufacturers that have great retail relationships. You want manufacturers that are preferred vendors, and more retailers are cutting back on the number of vendors they want to work with. So we can't dismiss the importance of that manufacturer and the relationship with retail. But if you're going to have a retailer truly understand the power of the brand, not just for one product or one category, but across the entire program, you need to get in front of those retailers. You need to tell them what's happening with the core product, what the brand is doing to engage consumers and promote the brand, and then who your partners are and what your strategy is. Retailers also want to know how you're going to support the product in their stores, and often that falls to the brand owner or the agent to really tell that story, not the manufacturer. It's a combination of the two. In many cases, we go to retail with a manufacturer and tell the story together. That's very, very effective.
Besides over-licensing, which we see hot brands do, what is the biggest mistake brand owners make?
You know, I think you have to look at proliferation in a strategic way. Does it make sense or not? And then there's other issues. So over-licensing is something that could really hurt a brand that's looking for longevity and long-term success. But if you're a movie that's coming out, you've got 1 year and 2 seasons, you're going to put as much product into the market as possible because that's where all your noise is going to be and that's where the consumer demand is going to be during a very concentrated period. So you know from your own experience, the rollout on a movie is multi-category and a plethora of product everywhere. On the other hand, if you're a brand looking for long-term success, you have to be careful that the product feels authentic to the brand, the quality is good, and it really aligns with what the consumer is willing to buy from that brand.
So I see a lot of brands expanding. You talked about a lot of your brands. On the other hand, I see a lot of brands, some in automotive, some in other areas, and they don't do any licensing at all. Why don't they do it?
I believe that brands are afraid that there is more risk than reward in licensing in some cases. I think that's a false assumption, but it's something that brands have to take a hard look at and understand. Are there brand enthusiasts who are looking for their product, and why aren't they delivering on those products? There is something else that a lot of brands, even who've entered into licensing, do that is a mistake. They try to align the product and the message too closely to the current campaign. Most brand enthusiasts love the heritage of a brand. Brands take years to establish that relationship with the consumer. And consumers are looking at 80s and 90s and kind of retro aspects of brands, not just what's happening today. So the brands that are really successful listen to the brand enthusiasts and allow them to celebrate all these heritage aspects, not just what's happening today with the brand.
I look at entertainment studios. They have big consumer product divisions, make a lot of money. I look at corporate brands, they generally don't have divisions. They actually hire outside. I mean, let's talk about agency versus in-house. Mm-hmm. Why do companies hire agencies versus just staffing up in-house?
Well, this is a little self-serving, Jim, but yeah. I have to say there are some specific reasons. First of all, the big companies rely on agencies for everything. All of their marketing is for the most part, farmed out to agencies. So even though they have robust marketing teams internally, they rely on agencies for their creative, their research, their execution, and licensing really falls within the same spectrum. The other reason is really a financial analysis. If your cost of having an internal team is going to be more than 30-35% of what you're going to generate, it's not worth doing it in-house. If you can't staff up properly, if you can't have the retail expert, the product design expert, the sales team, and all the rest of it, you're not going to have a fully leveraged and robust program. So you have to make sure that you can sufficiently fund a full-service licensing team internally And for most companies, that's not realistic either because of their internal policies, they don't want more headcount, or just financially it doesn't make sense.
So I'm at the point where I have a brand, I want to hire an agency, and I'm meeting with different agencies. What are the 3 most important questions I should ask? I've already seen what they've done, but how do I know this is the right agency for me? What are the 3 questions I should be asking an agency?
First and foremost, you have to understand your own goals and objectives. What are you looking for an agency to do for you? And then you have to measure how successfully has that agency delivered that for other clients. References are important, body of work, case studies, all of that is important. And then specifically, how well can they service some key areas? Do they have retail relationships? Are they regularly meeting with retailers? And do they have a team that knows that landscape? Can they help you create and manage your product development? Quality product, great product that is properly tested is really, really important. A brand never wants to put product out that disappoints your consumer, or worse, is at risk of harming their consumer. So product development teams that know about testing, work with the big testing labs, incredibly important. And then relationship with manufacturers, so you know you're getting the right manufacturers who will invest in your brand and really prioritize your brand as part of their portfolio. Those are important aspects of how you select an agency, but there's also certain chemistry. Finally, there is corporate culture. The corporate culture of a client and a brand have to be aligned. It has to mesh nicely. You're going to be working very closely with these companies, and you're going to be trusting this agency to extend your brand. It's a scary proposition for some people, and it has to be an agency that shares your vision and you can trust to execute your vision.
Debra, thanks for coming to Shop Talk, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and you'll see more episodes coming in the near future.